going on, guys, and welcome to today's video. And today we are in the garage and again working on Mom's 2015 Jeep Wrangler JK. Now, I have had a heck of a time trying to make the front of her Jeep look good. I will see if I can throw a picture in of when she purchased this Jeep, used obviously, and it had a very unfortunate to myself full width metal bumper, eBay, Amazon bumper. I just didn't love the look of it. It winged up on the edges. It just, to me, it didn't look good. Mom didn't really care, but of course, me being the son and the Jeep guy, I've got to make her stuff and Dad's stuff look cool too. So my thought was, hey, I can cut the end caps off of that thing for free, weld some plate on there, and have a stubby bumper. So that's what I did, and to be honest, I still don't love the thing. It's just looks a little bit out of place on her Jeep. Yes, I accomplished it not being goofy and winging up here. It just doesn't look right to me on her Jeep. Again, this was a cheaper Amazon eBay bumper that the previous owner purchased and bolted on the thing. It seems adequate enough, but I just don't love the thing. So I bought the eBay cheap, fake, knockoff Mopar metal bumper that we all see in our Facebook ads or on Marketplace or whatever. This is the knockoff Chinese metal bumper that they sell on eBay for pretty darn cheap, and I got it real darn cheap, so it was worth a try. And it's going to make the front of her Jeep look OEM or factory. This is the JlUR style metal bumper, but again, they all bolt onto the front of these things. This was marketed as a JK 10th anniversary style metal bumper, but it is just very blatantly a knockoff of the JlUR metal bumper. So I thought what we would do today is talk about the bumper and why you should buy the thing, even though the title of the video is I bought it so you don't have to, but you should. So let me explain why I think you should buy this cheap metal fake Chinese bumper. I see a whole lot of JKs and JLs for that matter with the factory plastic bumper come in with, one end or the other smashed, dented, deformed, whatever. You bumped into something and it's crushed the plastic, and unfortunately that looks kind of bad on your otherwise nice vehicle. So my whole thought process behind the cheap fake metal bumper is not something that you're really going to be wanting to put a winch on because it is thinner metal than the factory metal bumper, but this is going to be an absolutely cheap replacement for somebody that has the plastic bumper that's smashed, faded, looking tired, or in our case, somebody that bought their Jeep used that has a kind of weird aftermarket bumper that you really don't love. So guys, here is everything that came in the box, and it honestly came a lot quicker than I assumed it would since I think these things are coming from China. Now there was some assembly required. There was a lot of parts and pieces and brackets and stuff like that that are just kind of loose, which brings up the other issue. There's going to be some bumps, bruises, scratches, scuffs on these things from transport because they are just thrown in a box with some bubble wrap, but you've got a lot of metal parts and pieces that are banging around in the box, unfortunately. And I knew that ahead of time before I ordered this thing. There are a bunch of threads on the Jeep Wrangler forums talking about these Chinese fake bumpers. So I knew that there was going to be some bumps and bruises. But for the price, these are normally around $300. I happened to find a eBay listing that had a available discount code. At checkout, type save, whatever, and take a certain percentage off. So I was able to get this thing shipped to my door for $247. The thing showed up and it had some decent scratches, scuffs, blemishes on it like I talked about, so I went ahead, shot an email to the eBay seller and said, hey, what can you do for me? I got some scratches, scuffs, and marks on all of these parts and pieces, sent him pictures, and the guy just without question shot back and said, hey, I'll give you $55 back if you just want to keep it and not do a return. So I quickly said, sure. and can touch up these parts and pieces by myself. So as we talk now, I have $190 in a new Chinese fake metal bumper. Now, no, it does not come with fog lights. I went ahead and attached some factory LED fog lights to this thing, but here's all the parts and pieces. We've got the filler panel that goes behind the bumper on the frame rails. We've got the plastic bezels that will go on these once we get it attached and get our bolts tight. We do have the metal end caps, just like the Mopar bumper, so this could be a full width bumper as it would be from the factory. I, of course, like you guys know, like the stubby bumper look, so I went ahead and removed those. And last but not least, it comes with a winch plate. Now guys, I don't have any plans of putting a winch on Mom's Jeep, but if I did, I don't know that I would be wanting or trusting this winch plate. It's just super narrow where it counts. You know, this would be behind the bumper brackets, and it's just, there's not a lot of metal here between where they've got this piece cut. I don't think that this is probably a great design. It's not terribly heavy. So as of buying this to use as a winch bumper with their provided mounts, I probably wouldn't want to do that. Now, could you buy a real Warren mount or any of the multiple real manufacturers that make winch mounts that work for the Mopar bumper? Yeah, probably. You might have to do some cutting, trimming modifications to make it work with this bumper, but I don't know that I would be buying this to use for the winch bumper side of things, or at least with their winch plate, if that makes sense. Now guys, over here is just an absolute ton of hardware, nuts, bolts, brackets, parts and pieces. We've got some nuts on tabs that I assume is part of the winch plate mount. We do actually even have brackets that you could attach to the bumper to have additional light mounts. And what is really weird is the fact that this bumper is all trimmed out for front park sensors. Now, no US Wrangler has front park sensors from the factory, but I believe European Wranglers do have park sensors. So the fact that they've got these drilled and include bezels for park sensors is kind of funny, at least to us with our US Wrangler. So unfortunately, if you're going to be running the full width bumper, you're going to have some unfortunate holes here in the sides where those park sensors would be. Now guys, similarly on the front fog light bezels, you also have holes for park sensors. Again, we don't have those here, so what I've done is just thrown a piece of matte black vinyl over that hole, and that's going to look a lot better than a big gaping hole in our fog light bezels. And yes, this bumper does even come with a knockoff little small Mopar grill hoop here for, you know, the same included price. So it's kind of funny how much stuff this thing comes with for an absolutely cheap price. Now, fit and finish on this, is it as quality as Mopar? No, absolutely not. You know, Mopar, everything fits, the gaps are really nice and tight. This thing has some gaps underneath some of these brackets, some of the plates. The winch filler panel does fit obviously fine up here at the top, but there's just more gaps. But when you're paying $190, $200 for all of this stuff, you cannot expect $1,000 Mopar winch bumper quality. But for the price, I am extremely surprised or happy or whatever you want to say with this thing. So guys, I'm going to get this bumper torn off and the new fake Chinese knockoff Mopar metal bumper bolted on this thing, and we'll get kind of our final look at this thing and see how it looks on a JK. Okay, so real quick on fitment notes, most of the bolt holes are lining up on this thing. For whatever reason, the lower inside bolt holes are not lining up with the Chinese bumper, big surprise, but unfortunately don't have the large enough drill bit here. So we're doing some very crafty trimming here to enlarge just these inside lower bolt holes. But if that's the worst thing, then I'm fine with it. So the other weird kind of thing about it, the fog light bezels. The fog light brackets here have two holes that have corresponding little J-nuts on the back of the bumper, but for whatever reason, one of the holes on both sides was drastically off. So I did need to drill a new hole for my fog light bracket. But again, I'm kind of giving it a pass because it is a knockoff Chinese bumper that is outrageously cheap compared to its Mopar counterpart. So just letting you know, you're gonna need some drill bits for your install if you do choose to go this route. Well guys, here's the final product all bolted up on this thing. Now, yes, there was a little bit of grinding, trimming, drilling that needed to be done. Like I talked about, those front brackets to bolt the bumper onto the vehicle were slightly off. I would assume that it is the fact that we are a cheap Chinese knockoff here, that they are not perfectly lined up. But a little bit of drilling, a little bit of walling of the hole, and I had the bumper on, was able to get the nuts on the back and pull the bolts or the bumper on the rest of the way and got all of them bolted down. Now the filler panel that it came with is very much a copy of a JL filler panel, even though my listing blatantly said JK Fitment. This thing is no way, no how going to fit on to a JK. These wings wing up really high and would hit the grill, and you can't even get it far enough back. Now hopefully you've got a stock JK filler panel and you can just put that back on and it would be totally fine. I happen to have a factory plastic bumper JL filler panel that I was able to kind of trim and get in place. But again, that's just part of the charm of a cheap Chinese knockoff. There's going to be a little bit of fitment issues. So guys, do I recommend a cheap Chinese knockoff eBay Mopar metal bumper? Yes and no. If you're a hardcore wheeler that's wanting to put a winch on your Jeep and you're going to be banging it off of rocks every day, maybe not. Now the metal is decently thinner than it is over there on the real deal JL metal bumper, but because if you're wanting to put a winch in this thing like we talked about earlier, I would probably not be wanting to use the cheap winch plate that came with it. You're then buying or spending more money to buy a winch plate for the Mopar metal bumper that you probably might have to modify to even fit onto the knockoff bumper. So you're probably going to be money ahead in buying a real aftermarket bumper, if you will. Or if you are in love with the Mopar metal bumper, find one used on eBay. There's a bunch of takeoffs for not that much money, obviously more than this, but you understand what I'm trying to say. So who do I recommend this bumper for? Like again, we talked about a older JK or a JL for that matter with a factory plastic bumper that's been beat up, damaged, crunched, ran into something and is looking sad, tired, worn out. This is going to be an awesome install or bumper for the value. You know, something that you don't need to put a winch into or that you don't need to bang off rocks every other weekend. This is going to be perfect, and that's why it's bolted on Mom's Jeep. Unfortunately, this Jeep is going to be on road most of its life, but it now has the cool Mopar bumper part or look to the front end of this thing. So guys, hopefully this gave you some decent insight. If you've ever seen this thing pop up and wondered, man, is that cheap thing worth buying? So the answer is no and yes. But guys, thanks for coming out into the garage with me and installing a new part for me that I've never gotten to mess with, and honestly, I think it looks really darn good. So guys, as always, thanks for watching and we'll catch you guys next time.